Me and my brother will never be the same after a fake LGBTQ wedding. Broke our trust and ruined our relationship forever. July 17, 2023. I am 30 years old, and my brother, who is 31, and I have always shared a bond as close as twins. Our closeness forms a core part of our family dynamics. Whenever we have disagreements, which are rare and usually minor, the entire family feels the impact and steps in to resolve it because it feels so out of place. He walked me down the aisle at my wedding, and I even named one of my children after him. We have matching tattoos and talk on the phone nearly every day. When he started planning his wedding, he asked me to be a groomsman, while his friend, a woman in her mid-30s, would be his best man. This surprised everyone, given his significant role in my wedding and the fact that none of us really knew his friend. I told him I was hurt by this decision, but he responded by saying, "My wedding isn't about you." I decided to accept his request and focus on making his day special. Throughout the planning, he called me daily and we exchanged ideas. I helped with various tasks and tried not to dwell on titles, instead aiming to make his day as perfect as possible. He asked me to be the flower fairy for his gay child-free wedding, and I agreed. However, during the process of selecting dresses and shoes, he and his best man shot down all my suggestions. She sent options for basic heels costing around $100, which were beyond my budget of $45, especially for plain gold heels. The wedding party had a mean girl vibe from the start, treating me as an outsider. I attributed this to not knowing them well and the fact that they lived in a different state. They even criticized my choice of shoes, calling them too slutty because they laced up around the calf or ankle. Feeling uncomfortable, I asked if I could attend as a guest instead, so I could wear what I wanted and avoid the mean girl atmosphere. My brother insisted that I had to be by his side for the wedding. When I arrived in the state for the wedding, I discovered that the best man had organized the bachelor party the night before I got there, and everyone in the wedding party except me had attended. I chose to let it go and focus on my role in the wedding. I put on my fairy wings, danced down the aisle, and gave a heartfelt speech. Everything went well until the drag show at the reception. During the show, one of the queens announced that my brother and his partner had actually gotten married a year earlier. I turned to the rest of the wedding party and asked if they knew about this. They did. They had all been at the real wedding. Everyone but me. As I sat there trying to process everything, my mom, who had given them $3,000 for the wedding, stormed over and asked if I knew. When I told her I didn't, she immediately switched to supporting me, recognizing how bad the situation was. It wasn't about them already being married. They could do what they wanted. The issue was the $4,000 I had spent on this wedding. Coming from out of state, I bought a plane ticket and paid for a week at Airbnb, where most of the wedding party stayed without offering to contribute. I also covered the cost of the dress and the handmade fairy wings. I began to remember all the lies. 3 days after they got married, my brother visited my house while I gave birth to my last child, holding my newborn without mentioning his recent wedding. They made me feel crazy for feeling left out, gaslighting me and lying to my face for a year. Realizing all this, I tried to leave without causing a. His husband mockingly asked if I was mad. I said we'd talk another day, and that they should enjoy their night. The couple pulled me into a room where my brother cried, insisting he didn't mean to hurt me. I kept it together, saying we'd talk another day. His husband remarked, "Oh, so there is something to talk about then." I repeated that we could discuss it another day, and they invited me to brunch, to which I responded that I'd see if I was up for it. The next morning, I noticed the wedding party, and some guests were going to lunch. I chose not to go, avoiding another situation where I felt ganged up on. I left the wedding chat on Snapchat, which notified them. His husband then started blowing up my phone and my friend's phone, but we ignored him and went about our day. I haven't spoken to my brother since, except for brief responses to coordinate my trip to the airport. Before leaving, I asked them to crop me out of the wedding photos as I didn't want to be associated with a fake wedding and didn't want a reminder of how embarrassing it was. I told them I didn't want to speak to them again. My brother said nothing, but his husband called me a narcissist and said he felt sorry for the people who had to deal with me. Ironically, tricking 100 people into attending a wedding, much of which was funded by others, just to reveal it was a fake party seems more narcissistic than my reaction to the wasted time, money and energy. But alright, lol. I'm at a loss for what to do next. I've blocked both of them. There's a clear divide in our family, and my brother hasn't attempted to mend it. He had the opportunity to show me my importance to him, and now I have to accept his actions for what they are. I'll try to update in sections. First, regarding whether he's in an abusive relationship, that's subjective and up to each individual to decide. I won't label him as abusive since I'm not in their relationship. The mention of drag queens was simply because they are part of the story. One of the queens made the announcement, so it's relevant to the narrative. Mentioning that someone is gay or that drag queens attended the wedding is factual and part of the story. Our family, as well as my brother's new husband's family, have always been supportive and accepting. Regarding my mom, she has 2 children who are deeply hurt. She could never hate my brother, but she certainly doesn't agree with the choices he has made. She is trying her best to support both of us. As for the wedding, it was a gay wedding with no kids allowed. These are 2 separate facts. They did not ban gay children from their wedding. I mentioned these details to explain why I was flower fairy. There were no kids allowed, hence no flower girl, so I became a flower fairy to fit the gay and drag theme. I proudly put on those wings and danced down the aisle. There is nothing phobic about that. For those suggesting otherwise, you are projecting and reaching. I embrace the role with pride, knowing it aligned with the celebration's unique theme. The decision to exclude children was simply a part of the wedding plan, not a discriminatory action. By becoming a flower fairy, I was contributing to the and inclusive atmosphere of the event. It's essential to recognize that mentioning these aspects is part of the narrative and not an expression of any phobic attitudes. Calling someone narcissistic when it doesn't truly apply is, in my opinion, an attempt to weaponize the term. More info in the comments. July 17, 2023. Top questions. For some reason, I cannot edit my post to add this, so hopefully most of you will see it. As far as I know, there were no hard feelings between and the new husband going into the wedding. There was a period when they were dating that I expressed my disapproval of my brother working 2 jobs to support the new husband's dream of becoming a music producer. I watched my brother exhaust himself for years while his partner sat around smoking weed in his studio. This led the new husband to believe I hated him, even though we resolved these issues once he got a job and started contributing. Even when we didn't get along, I always made it clear that if my brother loves him, I do too. Both families have been very supportive. There is no homophobia or anything like that on either side. Is my brother in an abusive relationship? I don't know. I guess it depends on what each person considers abusive. I don't want to label my brother's partner unfairly as abusive, especially since I'm not in their relationship, and my brother has never expressed feeling abused. If you see this behavior as manipulative and abusive, that's up to your. I didn't decide this was a fake wedding. They did when they announced in the middle of the ceremony that they were already married. They made it a fake wedding when they revealed it was fake. Lol. Hello, Russian bots? Pushing propaganda? Okay, people, I only mentioned the drag show because it's uncommon. I found out that my brother had been married for a year through a drag queen announcement. That's just stating the facts. It has nothing to do with or how anyone should feel about them. They were paid to do a job, and they did it. I have no ill will towards anyone in any community. Those of you who think my mentioning them is judgmental or really reaching. For those wondering why I didn't mention that my brother is gay, why is that relevant? The people who have an issue probably have more of a problem with the community than I do. Stop making this post about anything other than what it is. At the end of the day, I am mourning the loss of my brother. I am mourning the I thought we had. Based on my perception of our closeness, I am honestly questioning my own sanity. Do you generally spend hours talking, getting matching tattoos, planning a wedding, and being at holidays and childbirth with someone you're not close to? If our closeness wasn't reciprocated, then he is a very good actor. Questioning our closeness has been the most hurtful part of this experience. It's made me question if I'm crazy. Gay wedding, child-free. 2 separate statements. It was not a wedding where gay kids were not invited. My brother is obviously gay and married a man, so it was a gay wedding. Children were not allowed to attend, making it child-free. 2 separate things. Both are okay. And I also want to say that I would never have put on fairy wings and danced down the aisle if I wasn't 100% supportive of them. Please stop trying to make this about anything other than 2 siblings having a falling out. Another comment. July 17, 2023. Okay, so I feel like you're really twisting the story here, lol. I didn't make sure everyone knew I was leaving the wedding. In fact, I left very discreetly around midnight when the wedding was ending at 1 a.m. I didn't make my brother cry. It was his husband who kept trying to force a conversation that I had respectfully asked to postpone multiple times so as not to ruin their day. I showed up and did everything my brother asked of me. I endured the bullying and kept my mouth shut for most of it after being accused of trying to make the wedding about me. From that point on, I went out of my way to make his day as special as possible. Comment about her husband. July 17, 2023. My brother tried to contact my husband to ask how to pay back what I spent to come to the wedding. My husband said he wouldn't get involved. My brother tried to convince him that I was overreacting. My husband told my brother that was absolutely not true and I had every right to be upset, and what he did was bonkers. My husband has been very supportive, but is also very sad to see me and my brother fighting like this. Update, July 19th, 2023. I'm trying to include as much information as possible, but it often ends up too long for Reddit, so I'll paraphrase a lot. The update is that there is no real update. Things remain the same, and they are still blocked. Someone suggested I write him a letter, which I did the day after everything happened. I left it in his room, detailing my feelings and how deeply hurt I was. During a 2-hour drive, he said absolutely nothing even after reading my letter. When I landed, I lost my composure after my husband informed me that my brother had sent a message claiming I was overreacting. I said many things I regret. However, I stand by my truth and perspective of what happened. Please stop trying to make this a phobia issue. Both families have been nothing but supportive, and they represent themselves, not an entire group. Mentioning the drag queens was relevant because one of them announced the secret marriage. How often do you see a drag show at a wedding? If you perceive an imaginary undertone, that's a problem. Moving on. I don't consider the new husband abusive, but abuse is subjective. I see him as emotionally immature. He's always been intimidated by my opinions because I can see through his BS. Weak men dislike strong women, and that's the case here. However, we had no issues on the wedding day or for years before. I made it clear that if my brother loves him and wants to spend his life with him, I support that. My mom is trying her best to support both of her kids. She could never hate my brother, although she absolutely hates what he did. As for me, I don't know who I am without my brother. He was as important to me as my children and my husband. It was always me and him. To say that I am mourning is an understatement. This whole situation has made me question a 30-year relationship. Realizing that he could lead a double life that I wasn't part of has shaken my entire world and sense of reality. I'm not okay. I plan to spend the next year with no contact, focusing on therapy to get my mind, body, and soul in the best place possible, while spreading as much good karma as I can. Maybe then I can decide whether to close that door permanently or if I'm ready to build a new normal with him. At the end of the day, I am absolutely devastated and heartbroken. I also want to address some frequently asked questions. First off, there was no chance that baby number 5 would be overshadowed. Their marriage anniversary coincided with their wedding date and had nothing to do with me or my pregnancy. Second, I understand people have small weddings and big ceremonies later, and that's okay. It's not about what they did, it's about how they did it. Third, I'm not a Russian bot pushing propaganda, although those comments did make me laugh. Fourth, if I knew why they felt comfortable doing this to me, I wouldn't be as confused as I am. I'm not leaving out any details. To be honest, it would be simpler if I'd done something terrible to earn this, as I would then know why and wouldn't have to wonder. At the end of the day, I'm not okay. I don't know if there's anything he could do to fix this. I'll always wonder if he's telling me the truth or what he's hiding. After the way his husband spoke to me and my brother allowing it, I am honestly disgusted with both of them. I deleted the original post because I didn't want them to be attacked. Sadly, I still feel the need to protect him. I don't know why. The brother-in-law appeared and made comments in the original post, July 23rd. Brother-in-law here. First off, having a big wedding ceremony a year later wasn't my idea. Once we decided to go through with it, we discussed many times whether to inform people beforehand to avoid situations like this. I've never had a great relationship with Op, but we've tried to make things work, mainly for my husband, her brother, because I knew they were very close. While I wasn't too fond of her due to past interactions, I understand the importance of close family relationships and would never wish to disrupt that bond. Op didn't want to discuss it at all. We tried to apologize and explain that our intention was never to humiliate or insult anyone, but she refused to have any conversation, especially on the night of the event. The next day at the Airbnb, I attempted to talk to her about how she was feeling, but she responded with snarky comments, saying there was nothing to talk about. That's when I said, "So there is something to talk about." I eventually gave up and left the room. Everything she said didn't help me or anyone else understand her feelings, and the little she did express seemed very self-centered, as if this had been a plan to humiliate her specifically, which it absolutely was not. Reading through this now, I do understand more why she felt that way, and for that, I truly am sorry. Anyway, I'm not entirely sure how these work or if there's a proper way to post this, but feel free to ask me anything. July 19th, 2023 Op. who felt publicly humiliated by her brother, new brother-in-law, and the wedding party, replied, "All I'm going to say is that you both are married now and you made your choice. You are a partnership, and you both collectively decided to do this, believing it was a good idea. The consequence is that I want nothing to do with either of you ever again. That's it. There is no reason or purpose to continue open dialogue about this, because it's done. Your post starting with you not liking me confirmed everything I said. I wish you and him nothing but happiness, but this conversation is over. I've heard your side, and it still isn't enough to justify what you did. I'm choosing to walk away from both of you." He admits in the text above that he knew. He literally says we didn't want to tell people because they were there and happy. He knew what he was doing. It was a huge manipulation. Lying to people to get what you want is manipulation. Omitting things from people to not give them the power to make a fair choice is also manipulation. They knew what they were doing. When others said, "Brother doesn't value sister the same way," that was it. That's the end of the argument. They both showed me exactly what I meant to them. The motivation behind it is not important anymore. Maybe this was just a total oversight and a mistake, but regardless, the result and consequence remain the same. I want nothing to do with you both. I wish you happiness because I will always love and if you make him happy, then I'm happy for both of you. Truly, I am. Our relationship was the sacrifice for this day, and you both decided to make it. I reacted to it and was trying to sort through my feelings by posting on this podcast. I did not expect it to go viral, so for that, I am sorry. I tried to remove the post, but it was too late. I realize that you don't like me due to past interactions, and that's fine. So what I'm about to say won't matter. My heart is completely shattered. I'm literally going through a mourning process, like someone died, because that night the relationship and I had did die. He has always been my person. He isn't now, and I've never felt more alone. I honestly don't know if I'm going to be okay. Both of your responses just confirm everything I said and felt. You have your side, I have mine, but ultimately, everyone is feeling the loss of me and N. This changes everything in the family. I'm going to continue to root for both of you, always, but I'm going to do it from my side of the world. In an emergency, either of you can call me, and I'll be there. But outside of that, I am done with both of you. You don't like me, and now I'm out of your life. You don't get to defer to N when it comes to me, but want to orchestrate our conversation after he did what he did. You are not a safe place for me, just like I'm sure you feel I'm not for you. You win. Go be with N. Go have a happy life. Op's brother-in-law, who made an account to respond. In hindsight, keeping the wedding a secret was a bad choice, and I openly admit that. As for the rest, it's tough because, although things were tense between us, I never wanted to make anything worse. Whenever I had to deal with Op, I would defer to her brother on how to handle it. Reading all of this was the first time I heard about her wanting to back out of the. Honestly, I have ADHD, so I'm not great at planning. And anyone who knows knows that her brother is the type of planner. I wasn't as involved in the wedding party or planning. I wish I had phrased things differently, but I did say that after she refused to talk to anyone for 2 days. Once her brother dropped her off at the airport, she decided to put us both in a group chat and go off about how she stands by her truth and won't hear anything else. I know it was mean, and I regret it, but it's too late. Regarding the hindsight is 20/20ths. I was fearful of a grand upset, and I'm pretty sure her brother was too. We talked about it, but it was one of those things where you forget to text back, and after a while, it's too awkward to say anything. Obviously the magnitude of these things is vastly different, but when we decided to keep it a secret, we just stuck to our guns. Time flew by and before we knew it, it was the week of the wedding. By that point, we thought about telling her and some other key family members, but we figured it had been so long already. Rather than risk a huge blowout that could result in the wedding not happening, we decided to wait and hope for the best. Dumb decisions were made, and that sucks. The comment I made is the only mean thing I said to her all week, and it came after trying so hard to smooth things over with her and her brother and receiving a cold shoulder, followed by weird accusations. She can hate me, and that's fine, but her brother doesn't deserve the vitriol omitted from Op's posts. I was hoping things would work out. The section above reflects my perspective at the time. Given that I only had a bit of her perspective, filtered through all the anger, I feel more sympathetic now. I still don't agree with everything, but I understand more. Again, I'm sorry for how painful it really was. I wish things could have been done differently. Sorry for the huge run-on sentences. I'm not placing blame on anyone. I'm just recounting what happened. The ADHD explanation doesn't absolve anything and wasn't intended to. I fully admit my part. in the wrong, but I didn't master anything, like people assume. We made a dumb choice. That led to hurt, and I truly apologize for that. However, I won't let thousands of people accuse me of something I didn't do without at least trying to clarify. From my point of view, there's a whole history between Op and me from years ago that was left out of her posts, and she knows that. Final comment from the brother-in-law. Alright, I've said my piece and apologized. I've tried to smooth things over as much as I can. I hold no ill will towards anyone, and never have. It wasn't supposed to hurt anyone, but it did, and that sucks. I didn't mastermind anything, and this wasn't my idea. I said something mean at the end after being blasted in text. No one's perfect. You formed your opinions about me from a one-sided perspective, and that's okay. This is Reddit. At the end of the day, those commenting weren't there and don't know the people involved in real life. I wish you all the best in your future endeavors. I genuinely mean that. But yeah, well, I was at this wedding, though I was not part of the wedding party. I agree that a lot of what happened with Op is messed up. However, I'm calling bullshit on some of the things said by her brother's husband, or at least the tone, or the way it was interpreted. That man might be the most stand-up guy I know. He quickly became a best friend of mine when he became my boss over a year ago. I've seen him go above and beyond to help people. He's not even the only way I see him doing these things, as if Op said some things she's omitting from her post. Second thing I'm questioning. The entire wedding party was not at lunch the next day. I was there and only 2 of the 6 members were present. Op's brother's best man was there and one other person. There was a plan for everyone to go, but everyone had their own things to do. Lots of stuff needed to be driven around, etc. Again. What happened with Op was messed up, even from the point of view I heard, which was her brother's husband, and I'm confident that I only know about 10% of the actual events. However, every story has 2 sides, or rather, 4 in this instance. Her not being at their actual wedding makes sense, given that she had just moved to the East Coast, and the wedding was on the West Coast. That, and, as she mentioned, she gave birth 3 days later. If it was my sister, she would have known, at least, and she would have been my best man at the wedding party. But that's me. I wouldn't be surprised if some of this was exaggerated based on what I know, which again isn't much. There are always 2 sides to a story for sure, but let's strip away all the narrative and focus on the main issues here. Op invested a lot of time, effort, and money into the wedding, believing it was a real ceremony. She thought she was one of the most important people there. She even had the courage to fairy dance down the aisle, which not everyone would be brave enough to do, only to have it revealed in a humiliating way that the wedding was fake. Man, I'd be so gutted by handling things they probably made her feel really hurt and took away her important role in the wedding in just a few seconds. Then she realized she was the only one who didn't know. Kick a fairy when she's down. It really could have been far better thought out. I'll be honest, I would feel like the butt of the joke and really embarrassed. I think most people would. We all make mistakes, and some damage control is certainly needed to rebuild bridges. Hope they work it out. I don't know what I'd do without my brothers and sisters in my life. A wedding guest and friend, or former employee of the brother-in-law, commented on the situation. They agreed with most of what was said, but pointed out that Op had made assumptions about at least 2 things. One of these was the lunch they attended. Op assumed it was a large lunch that included everyone except her, which was not the case. It was only the commenter and 3 others. The commenter chose the place to eat just 5 minutes before they went. They clarified that they simply attended the wedding and stayed overnight, since they had driven 90 minutes to get there. Most of the wedding party wasn't present at that lunch, and the grooms had said they wouldn't be attending because they wanted to spend time with Op. The commenter questioned what other assumptions Op had made. They knew Op assumed her brother's husband had put him up to keeping the previous wedding a secret and that it was all his idea. However, this was not the case. The decision not to tell anyone was actually her brother's idea. The commenter reiterated that Op's feelings were valid regarding many aspects of the situation. They acknowledged they knew less than Op, her brother, or her brother's husband, but believed that if Op and her brother had a conversation about it, much of the tension could be resolved. While it might not completely heal the wounds, both should be willing to try. They expressed surprise that Op's brother didn't speak at all in the car with her, calling it unfortunate. Finally, the commenter clarified that they didn't know Op personally, beyond shaking hands and introducing themselves at the beginning of the wedding. They admitted being biased since they knew her brother's husband well, and her brother fairly well by that point. 2. New update. February 6, 2024. I wish I could say that my brother had begged for my forgiveness and that things had returned to how they were, but they haven't. Nothing in my situation has changed. The only thing that has truly changed is my perception of someone I thought I knew. Many people might not understand this because they aren't close with their siblings, but this experience has felt like a true death for me. Sometimes my grief is so overwhelming that I don't know how to handle it. My brother hasn't reached out, explained, or even seemed to care, and that has been a real mindfuck. Going from someone who was as important to me as my husband and children to someone who shows repeatedly how little I meant to them has been devastating. He has doubled down on the "I didn't do anything wrong" and "you're overreacting" or stance, which feels like the biggest slap in the face. If someone can't admit they did something wrong, they will never truly be. The chances of their behavior repeating are high. Many of you pointed out that our relationship might have only been this important to me, and I think you're right. For a long time, I cried every day during times we would normally talk on the phone, when a song reminded me of him, and sometimes for no reason other than the feeling of a hole inside me. But I find myself crying less and less. Sometimes when I think of him, my first thought is, wow, it's been days since he even crossed my mind, and I guess that's progress. Right? I'm not crying every day anymore, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't still shedding tears. Tears he doesn't deserve, but they come anyway. That's the thing about unconditional love. It still exists even when the other person has broken your heart. It doesn't go away, but sometimes the other person can no longer have access to that unconditional love. We have spoken briefly over the phone during the holidays to deal with a family emergency involving another family member. It was pretty much all business. Everyone around us kept saying, "I'm so glad you guys are talking again." But we weren't. We were just dealing with business, and I guess that's all the talking we will ever do again. At one point, my husband chimed in and told him how much he misses him too, and my brother cried. I guess I forgot that I wasn't the only one losing someone. But either way, it doesn't change anything. My kids haven't even noticed. He did try to send Christmas gifts to them through my mom, but only because I mentioned him not acknowledging my son's birthday. So is that all he'll ever be? Impersonal, generic gifts that my kids get once a year? I told my mom to send them back, saying they don't need a gift uncle. They have enough of those. On my husband's side, I also realize that if you don't have a good, respectful relationship with me, you don't get access to my children. To be honest, he never really took much interest in my kids anyway. I know he cares and loves them, but as far as a personal, one-on-one relationship with them, the extent of his involvement was always me telling him about them. There wasn't a deep pre-established relationship between my kids and him. With him not being on good terms with me or my husband, I'm not going to allow him access to my children. I would feel the same way and react the same way toward anyone else. If someone repeatedly shows they don't love and respect you, why would you allow them access to your kids? Especially if all they are is a once-a-year gift. I'm not healed, but I'm on my way. It's not better, but it's getting better. I feel like I'm suffering the consequences of someone else's actions. I was spiraling, but I'm finding my new normal. I'll update again at the 1-year mark.